first of all, looking at attachment. So attachment is a key concept, a key phenomena that happens between infants and caregivers. And there was an early attachment worker, John Bowlby, who described it as primary motivational systems. So this is where evolutionary-wise, every human has this natural instinct to be able to attach to a main caregiver. And this is for survival, that as young infants or children, we couldn't survive without older adults around. Excuse me. So we need other people for food, for shelter, to help us if we're sick. And so it makes sense that we have this innate drive to be able to be supported and attached to someone. And this drive is also there even if maybe sometimes some of those people weren't so safe or the relationships weren't so healthy. And this can also affect then later life relationships. So the main early life attachment styles with caregivers can then be a bit of a blueprint and kind of be repeated in later romantic relationships or even friendships or at work or any type of relationship. So I've got this image here of a quite ancient old building and a tree with its roots going in and around it. And this is looking at how the nervous system can be incredibly wise and be able to survive and navigate challenging or difficult situations. So if there was some challenges in a relationship with early caregivers, the nervous system's really clever in finding ways to attach to that caregiver and try and keep someone safe or minimize harm as much as possible. So some symptoms that might come up if someone has been trying to survive really challenging situations might be hypervigilance. It could be feeling mistrustful, really intense, extreme emotions, fears of abandonment, self-blame or shame, depression or anxiety. And often these are seen as symptoms that often people blame themselves for having. And if we can really reframe that and look at them as survival coping mechanisms, that the nervous system has a really good blueprint and way of attaching to people to also stay safe. For example, with self-blame shame, this is a genius survival coping strategy where if someone maybe in power or authority wasn't so kind or there was stressful interactions, it might not be safe to express an opinion or to show anger with that person. It could create more conflict. So it's actually a safety thing that the nervous system makes us feel shame. And then when we feel shame, we want to kind of not speak up, kind of be smaller. And so that actually helps people survive without having as much danger. And if there has been trauma in the child-parent bond, this can create what's called attachment wounds in adulthood. And some of you might have heard the term attachment wounds. We can see this as two sides of the coin of survival responses. So on one hand, it's kind of symptoms and ways the nervous system responds to help us survive a challenging situation. And on the other hand, it's also the very symptoms that later in life might be causing a bit of chaos or kind of troubles, and also in dating and relationships. Attachment trauma can be described as having an overwhelming sense of loneliness and emotional distress, difficulties forming a secure attachment, so feeling kind of safe and consistent in a relationship, and it also can be hard to trust others. They've been shown that trauma can come in various different forms to create attachment wounds, and this can also be chronic invalidation. So if someone was around someone where there was, I guess, minimizing, dismissive or critical comments around someone's emotions or inner world. And if there's this chronic invalidation, this can also be linked to later challenges in relationships later in life. I've got this image here of a green plant growing in a desert. So this is to show that the nervous system can be really wise in navigating and surviving a harsh environment. So this can be whatever trauma someone's experienced in, that there would be these really wise ways to survive it. And at the same time, sometimes when the nervous system's in a new context, new situation, someone's trying to go into dating and meet new people, the nervous system responds as though it's still a desert and still that same harsh environment, even though maybe it's a new context or landscape, maybe it's a rainforest or a beach. And it's hard to sometimes train the nervous system to respond in a different way to then create dates and the relationship you're looking for. I've got this other image here which shows a more old building on the outside and then a new glass structure in the middle. And this is to represent that when we're looking at shifting patterns or helping train the nervous system to be able to do relationships differently to make dating a more helpful experience, we don't need to overhaul the whole system, that it's fine to have a base of a certain blueprint. We can use certain ways that someone normally responds to people in a way to help them find a relationship, and also just making a bit of changes, a bit of adjustments here or there to make it even more helpful. So that's building that glass structure. So for example, if someone noticed that they have more hypervigilance or anxiety in dating, a lot of people don't realize this is actually a really helpful emotion to alert us if there's any changes in our dynamic. And maybe though the normal instinct is to then avoid situations or conflict, and in changing ways in dating, maybe it's bringing a bit more assertiveness, learning to use that anxiety to your advantage. I've got a diagram here. It's called polyvagal theory, and it's just to briefly show how after trauma, the nervous system can be in survival modes and how this could then affect how people view kind of dating or how the nervous system responds to relationships. So you've got the bottom zone of the nervous system, which is social engagement, the green part. This is when the nervous system feels safe and calm, and people can feel more in the present moment, experience more joy, more curiosity. And physiologically, it's probably too small writing to see on the right-hand side, the nervous system is doing all these longer-term restorative things like digestion is working well, sleep, immune system functioning, and people can also release more oxytocin, which makes us feel safe and bond with other people without having defenses online. The next nervous system state, if there's a potential threat or danger, is to go into a sympathetic fight or flight, where people might experience more worry, fear or panic, or irritation, anger, frustration. And physiologically, there's a whole rush of adrenaline and cortisol, and this changes appetite, it switches off digestion, it makes it harder to sleep, and it also changes thinking patterns. It makes them more narrowed towards threats or danger and focused on worst case scenarios. And I'm sure a lot of people can relate to experiencing this in dating, where gone on a first date and then suddenly waiting for a message or kind of ruminating after the date. There's a lot of worry, worst case scenarios, kind of replaying events. The next survival state is freeze, shutdown, where people might feel more depression, hopelessness, shame, or shut down. And the body's really going into hibernation mode to wait out any dangers or threats. And physiologically, there's more endorphins to actually numb emotions. And while this could have been really helpful in the past, sometimes in new dating experiences, it can be quite challenging because someone might feel excited for a date and then suddenly not know why they're feeling really hopeless about it, or having a lot of thoughts that it's never going to work out anyway. And yeah, when we're talking about skills to shift dating, we're trying to help the nervous system come back down into the green more fluidly.